So the first step on your matting instructions is to measure your artwork. So when you're measuring your artwork, if you have something like this artwork right here where you don't have any white space that you want to cut off, you're just measuring from one side of the paper to the other. But if it's something like this artwork where you want to cut off some of the edges or cut off the edges so then you can only see the work, then you'll be measuring from what you want to be seen. So if I only want this image to be shown in my matting, I would measure from the edge of my artwork. So that would be 8 inches, and then this way it would be 10 inches, okay? I'm not matting this one, I'm matting this artwork. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the horizontal and the vertical. It's really important that you measure the correct horizontal and vertical, because if you mix them up, then your measurements are going to be completely wrong for the entire matting instructions, okay? So I'm going to measure my horizontal like so. Remember, horizontal is like horizon line. My measurement is 7 inches, so I'm going to put 7 inches into the horizontal section of my matting instructions. And then I'm going to measure my vertical. My vertical is 8.5 inches. I highly recommend that you only work with halves and fourths when you're measuring these, just because it's going to make the matting and measuring a lot easier later on, okay? The next instructions on the matting is going to be subtract 1/4 of an inch from each of those measurements. So I'm going to subtract 1/4 from 7. That is going to be 6 3/4. And then I'm going to subtract 1/4 from 8.5. So then that is 8 1/4. If you need help subtracting 1/4, please let me know. I will help you. Easiest way that I like to remember is I think of quarters. There are 4 quarters in a dollar. That is kind of how I do the math for this. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to add 4 inches to the horizontal measurement, and then you're going to add 5 inches to the vertical measurement. This is why I said before it's really important that you don't get these two measurements mixed up, because it is going to mess up your measurements later on. So I'm going to add 4 to 6 3/4, that is 10 3/4, and then I'm going to add 5 to 8 1/4, and that is 13 1/4. So these are my outside measurements. This is the first thing that I'm going to measure onto my mat board. I'm going to tell you a few things about the T-square before we get started putting our measurements onto our mat board. So this is the T-square. You can find them hanging up in the room somewhere or in a bucket. I will tell you where they are. There is this blue section, and then there is the ruler itself. Something I want you to notice about this is that one side, the 0 starts at this blue, and on the other side, the 0 starts at the top of the ruler. We are only going to be using this side of the ruler where the 0 starts at the blue. Please make sure that you're using the right one, okay? So I have my piece of mat board here. There will be some cut pieces of mat board that you can use in the back of the room and some scraps that you can use as well. I'm going to measure out these measurements first onto the mat board. It is really important that you're using a T-square to do these measurements to make sure that they are square to your piece of board. Another thing I want you to keep in mind is which side of the mat board you want to be the color of the frame. So if you want the color of your frame to be this black side, you're going to be doing your measurements on the white. And if you want your frame to be white, you're going to be doing your measurements on the black. Okay? I'm going to be doing it on the white side. The first measurement that I'm going to do is my 10 3/4. So I'm going to take my T-square. I like to have my T-square off of my desk over here so I can make sure that it's completely flat onto the mat board. And I'm going to measure 10 3/4. So I'm going to go up. 10 3/4 is right here because that is my horizontal measurement. I'm going to make one mark, and then I'm going to move my ruler over to the left, and I'm going to make another mark. So now I have 2 marks on my mat board, okay? I'm going to turn my mat board, line up my ruler with those 2 marks. One of my marks is right here. The other mark is up top there. And then I'm going to draw a line connecting up those dots. And now I have a pencil mark on my paper. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing for my other measurement, which is 13 1/4. I'm going to take my ruler. I'm going to go up to 13 1/4. Add a dot. If you can see that, 13 1/4. Move my ruler over. Do the same thing. Add a dot at 13 1/4. You can see the two dots that I made over here. Then I'm going to turn my mat board again, line up my ruler with those two dots, and then draw a line. Okay? Notice how my rectangle is from a corner. It is not floating in the center. This is what you want to do for your mat. Okay? Alright, you're going to take your mat board to the mat cutter once when you have your outside measurements all made. You're going to take your mat board, put it underneath this black tab. Make sure it's under this black tab, because if you don't put it under there and you try to like move stuff around, it's going to wiggle. So if you put it under the black tab, it won't move once when you put this bar down. So the way that you line it up is you line it up with this inside section right here of the bar, to the best of your ability. When you're doing the outside measurements, you use the straight cutter. That is the one with the handle that is straight up and down. And then this hooks on to the track. There's these little hooks over here. It hooks on. Don't try to slide it on like that. It's not going to do anything. Hook it onto the track so it slides. You are then going to take your left hand, push it down on top of this bar. Your right hand is going to push down, and you're going to pull towards you, okay? So, since you couldn't see it up there, the motion is push down, pull towards you. So you'll do the same thing for this other line as well. Underneath the black tab, line it up with the bar. Hook it on so it slides like this, push down, pull towards you. Alright, I'm going to be doing the frame measurements now. Something to know about the frame measurements is that the bottom measurement is going to be 3 inches, all of the other measurements are going to be 2 inches. So I like to take my artwork, put it on top of my mat board, and check to see where those 3 inches are going to be. So since my artwork is in portrait, I know that the bottom part down here is going to be 3 inches, and all of these other edges are going to be 2 inches. So I just like to write that down to remind myself that the bottom is 3 inches, and then all of these sides are 2 inches other than this bottom one, okay? So now I'm going to take my T-square. This is where a lot of people like to overcomplicate this method. It is really easy, especially if you have this blue T-square, because there are these numbers that are on the side. These are inches, okay? So the easiest way to do this is take your T-square, push it at the bottom of your mat board so it's flush up against it, and then line up the corner with the number 2. So let me bring it closer to the camera so you can see. I'm lining up the edge of the mat board with the number 2, and then I'm just going to draw a straight line going up. So now this section over here is going to be 2 inches from bottom all the way to the top, and I can check that with a different ruler. Notice it is 2 inches on the sides, okay? I'm going to do the same thing for this other side as well. I'm going to line up the edge of my mat board, making sure my T-square is flush with the bottom with the number 2. And then I'm going to draw my straight line up, okay? So now I have 2 inches on both of these sides. I'm going to turn my mat board, and I'm going to do the same thing for this top one. I'm going to line up the edge of my mat board with the number 2, draw a straight line going up. The only difference for when we are doing this is when we are doing the bottom, because the bottom is 3 inches. So we're going to line up the edge with the number 3 on the blue T-square. And then draw, ooh, pencil broke. Draw a line going up. So now I have a nice frame all laid out, and I can cut it with the bevel cutter. Before I go cut it with the bevel cutter, I'm going to make sure that my image fits in these measurements that I made. So what I like to do is just take my image, lay it down on top of the lines I just made to make sure that my image is covering up all of those lines. You might notice that your image might go over the line a little bit, and that is perfectly fine because we added that 1/4 of an inch, or we subtracted that 1/4 of an inch from our measurements before. That is that 1/4 of an inch that we subtracted, okay? All right, now that you have your window measurements in, you're going to be cutting them with the bevel cutter. The bevel cutter is the other cutter. It cuts on an angle. This is how it cuts. And then another thing to notice about this bevel cutter is it has a line. Sometimes it has this purple line. In the instructions, it says purple line starts at the pencil line and ends at the pencil line, but sometimes the line is just a black line. So if you see any kind of line on the side, pay attention to that. That is important on the bevel cutter. When you're placing your mat board onto the mat cutter, you want to make sure that your smaller amount of mat is on your left and your larger amount of mat is on your right. So I have the smaller amount on my left. Once again, it is underneath the black tab. I'm going to put the bar down. Same thing as before, line it up with that inside. This also has hooks to hook on so it can slide. So I'm going to hook it on there. I'm going to pull this forward so you can see it a little bit better. Now, when we use the bevel cutter, this line that I pointed out before, it starts at the pencil line that you made and it ends at the other pencil line. So I'm going to take my left hand, push down on the bar again, take my fingers, push in to the board. Sometimes when you push in, it like launches up a little bit. That is perfectly fine. So the purple line is going to go down and stop at the pencil line. And before you even lift up your mat board, you want to do that 2 more times. And sometimes with these mat cutters, they get stuck down like this. You just have to pick it up. And then it's all good. So I have my line cut. And then I'm going to do the same thing for all of the other sides. So, I have to move this over. Smaller side on the left, underneath the black tab, bar down, line up. This hooks on here. Purple line starts at that pencil line. Push in, pull towards you. Purple line stops at the pencil line. All right, now that I've cut all of the edges, my middle part should just fall out like that. And now I have a nice mat board with beautiful beveled edges. And then you'll take this and tape your artwork in the back. All right, my mat board is all nice and cut. You can see the white bevels, they're facing the right directions. There's no tears, it's all nice and perfect. This is what a 100% mat board looks like, okay? So once I have my mat board all done, I'm gonna flip it over. I'm gonna take my artwork, flip that over as well, and place it right on top of that. If you need help centering it, I can show you how to center it on the light tables. I'm not too worried about centering it right now, so I'm just going to place it on there. I'm going to take the masking tape that we have, and I'm going to tape up the sides. You really don't have to add a bunch of tape to make your artwork stick, and it's actually better if you don't cover all of your edges with the tape, because it allows your artwork to breathe. So there we go. I have it all taped up, and now my artwork is in my frame. Your last step is you're going to tape an artist label that you completely filled out to the bottom of your artwork. Imagine that this is an artist label. I just didn't feel like getting one, so I have a post-it note. Artist labels will be at the front of the room. They might already be cut, or you have to cut them yourself. Okay? So your artist label will always be hanging off the bottom right over here. So that means you're going to have to take a piece of tape, put it on the back of your artist label, and then you're going to put it on the back of your artwork, making it as nice and center as possible. Just like so. So now I have this artist label hanging off, and my artwork is complete. I'm going to take a picture of this, I'm going to upload it to Classroom and fill out my rubric, and then I am done with my project.